Okay, the stage is yours. This is the
Okay.
title. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, hello.
Hello, everyone.
You will hear the truth. Well, almost the truth. I'm Liza, creative director at Studio Dumbar, and
I'm Chris. Nice to meet you.
so ciao Torino. That's all my Italian for you for today. So let's go straight to the point. Studio Dumbar. It's a studio that is about 41 years old. So for some of us, that's very, very young studio. For others, it's probably an old studio. And it's one of the studios in the Netherlands that really focuses on visual identity. So logos for businesses, governments, all sorts of areas. And this is the team over there from the 80s. It was founded by Gert Dumbar, who's the guy over there. He retired, I think, the microphone, yeah? He retired about 15 years ago, and this is the team sort of now, and we realize you do not have to be extremely good looking to run a studio. That is the truth, the first truth. We're also part of DECT, and this is a digital, the leading digital network in Europe, which focuses purely on digital. The core is branding, but everything we do around us in all these years is becoming more digital. So for us, it was important to connect also with DECT. But what do we actually do? Because that's what you're here to see. So this is a small sort of show reel that we made up with some of the So, to tell you a little bit more of what is in the background, more the ingredients of Studio Dumbar. Actually, what I always like to say, it is about pancakes. I mean, that's sort of the Dutch national dish. That's as good as the cooking gets. That's the second truth. um, and why I say that, it is really about the ingredients. So for a pancake, you need to have good eggs, good flour, good milk, and a good pan to make a good pancake. And it's the same thing that when you have a studio, every single member in the studio has to be equally good and is equally important. You cannot say, oh, we have a good creative director and so everything will be fine. That's rubbish. Or you have a good designer and everything will be fine. It has to be, everybody has to be equally good. So we really, really take care of each other to make sure, that we do our best possible work. And just to introduce you a little bit of our backgrounds, like who is working there. For myself, I love to write, so everything I do, everything I do that is not working at the moment. I write my processes, and that's the way I enjoy working, and not necessarily always sketching. On the other hand, I started up a radio station about 15 years ago called Type Radio, interviewing people from all around the world. And I collect books like crazy. So all those books up there, I was like, I want to steal this one, I want to steal that one. So if there's any books missing, they're with me. Just so that's the fourth truth. Just to show you that this is when I decided at home I should put things in alphabetical order. Stupid idea, don't do this. Anyway, so then there's Dan, and he's a visual designer, and he's really, really into football, the guy with the red beard. He's also really into Juventus. I don't know if that's a good thing to say here. But he's also, one of those football people that burn stuff. And I have to say, he's a good person. Do not be scared of the hooligans. And he's also a graffiti artist. On the other hand, we have the operational director, Wouter, who's into tattoos. He actually tattoos himself with all his kids' tattoos. The girls love it, and everybody goes, but it's a pretty shitty tattoo. I mean, oh, sorry, Wouter. No, it's cute. Anyway, and he also likes to fall out of planes. And that's what's so great, I think, about Wouter. He's willing to take risks, and that also means a lot when it comes to design, but he's on the side of the operational part. So, here with us is young Christopher.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Christopher North. I'm a visual designer and motion designer at Studio Dumbar. And I want to introduce myself by two obsessions that I have. The first one is that I love dreaming about the future. I like the evolution of mankind, where we're heading. I like technology. I like space travel. And I think this started off at a very young age, the Thunderbird that could fly all around the world in these reusable rockets. And I think this is still relevant because here you have SpaceX with the Falcon 9 that are also reusable rockets, but it's now reality. Next to that, my favorite book, Homo Deus, my favorite series, Black Mirror, and my favorite movie, the latest Blade Runner. So I think you get the picture. I like the future. But I said I have two obsessions. And next to dreaming about the future, I also worry a lot, like a lot. And this starts off a little bit with the smaller things, like am I good enough of a designer? Should I eat a little bit more healthy? Probably. Am I losing my hair again? And will you guys notice this stain on my shirt? I hope not. But also some bigger worries. Around 2050, there are going to be some heavy stuff we have to deal with. Climate change, overpopulation, maybe even a food shortage. And I think about this a lot, but it also inspires me in some way. So my graduation project is a survival guide for us Westerners, because we kind of suck at surviving here. And this thing helps you preparing for these disasters. For example, by making a strong rope out of your TV cable, or catch a rabbit with your computer that is now useless. But of course, you're here for the work of the studio and not my computer trap. So I want to show you some projects. First of all, Amsterdam Sinfonietta. Amsterdam Sinfonietta is an orchestra from Amsterdam. That's why it's, you understand. And what is really cool is that they are an orchestra that is really striving to be innovative, etc. And that's why we create posters for them for about 14 years now.
14.
14.
Yeah.
Here you see a small overview, and what we actually do is that a designer gets to design 2 seasons of posters. So they have time to really test out stuff and look what they like to make and really evolve in making posters. And what is lovely, if you look at this overview, is that you can really see the difference in approach of how they design. And I think the result is quite cool. But let's look at some posters a bit larger. This is one of the first posters made, or the first series made for Amsterdam Sinfonietta. It's by Oliver from Germany. These posters are from Reggiani, and what is really nice is that she brought a lot of color to the designs. These posters are from Sasha. He is from Holland. And he doesn't really like classical music, and I think you can see that a little bit. This is one of the posters of Erik. Erik still works at the studio. He's a senior designer, and he's a classical Dutch graphic designer. So he really likes grids, bright colors, and the systematic approach of designing posters. And what I think is really interesting is that the contrast between these two, because this is a poster of Kek Feng, a Malaysian designer, and you can really see that Kek Feng doesn't like grids. He likes to paint with letters and with forms, shapes, etc. And this contrast of approach, I think, is really interesting to look at. Here we have the first season of Vincent Frins. He's a Belgian designer. And for the first season, he approached it on a more three-dimensional way, with Cinema 4D, for example. But around the second season, he decided to do it a little bit different. So you can see here, he approached it with a more minimalistic style, as a reference to, for example, Wim Krauwel. And it's lovely to see that he could really shift in the middle of this series and try something new. And the freedom is there to do that. And here you can see the posters of Daan Rietbergen, the guy with the red beard, the hooligan that you shouldn't be afraid of. And you can really see that this graffiti history comes through in the posters, like the way he uses letters and again almost paints with them. But this year, the relationship that we have with Amsterdam Sinfonietta got even closer, because they asked us to do a look again at their identity. We created this identity 14 years ago, and it's the diagonal logo is always stuck in the corner, and these same diagonal lines, we use them in the typography, but also in the rest of the identity. But they wanted us to do a little refresh. They changed as an orchestra, and they actually came with a briefing where these 4 terms were, I think, the essence of it. So quality, perfection, experiment, and innovation. And especially the experiment and innovation was something that stuck out for us. So after a long sketching process, we came to this. On the left, you see a processing code, and this is actually the sort of tool we use to make the picture on the right. We can feed it with music and with motion design, and it will translate it to the pattern in letters. Let's look at a small example of it. So you can see that this identity loves to dance and move freely around the canvas, and this really reflects also the orchestra. but it doesn't move always, of course. We also use static images, and with the use of very vibrant and contrastful colors, yeah, we can still do this sort of, I think, nice layouts.
Please speak to the audience.
I will. Next to that, it's not just the A and the S. We can also feed it with different texts. So, for example, here we said perfection, and even whole sentences. What is also cool about the code is that we can change the grid and we can change the size of the letters. So we can really make it expressive or a bit more toned down if needed. After we created this tool, we of course created the rest of the identity and some of the touch points. And what is really nice is that we're also starting again with the new posters, but with the entirety of the new identity, with the tool we generated, and with a new layout from the posters. And this poster is actually finished last week, so it's still fresh. And I think I'm really excited to see what the new designers are going to do with it, and how the different approaches of every designer is going to influence the work and what they make. To keep a little bit in this cultural area, I also want to talk about the Youth Foundation Sport and Culture. They are an organization who help kids out of low-income families, and they help them participate in cultural and sport activities. They came with a question to us because they started out as two different organizations, and they were about to merge. And I think at the core of the organization, they're really talking a lot about freedom. Freedom for these kids to move and to play and to participate in things they normally couldn't. And yeah, but if you think about this freedom, this is something graphic designers, with all our crazy rules, it's something quite hard to express. So for example, if we look at some random rules about logos, from you can't stretch it, or you can't use it on separate colors or whatever. Never touch the logo. We thought, yeah, there is a contrast here. Like, how can a kid play around, or how can we make an identity that is about freedom, but we have all these rules in the back of our mind? So we said, screw the rules. Every logo you see here is good, and you can do whatever you want with it. You can stretch it, you can squeeze it, just like a kid running around and playing. And actually, by adding a little bit of motion, come on, yes. Yeah, you can see that it's really about movement and about an active role. And this added layer of motion, can really enhance what you're looking at and what the canvas is doing. For example, here the kid playing basketball, it reflects on the typography that is also bouncing. Next to that, we can stretch and we can really divide canvases in a sort of grid manner. But yeah, there aren't really rules. So what we can come up with, we can do it. And especially in combination with these big photos of kids and these vibrant colors, I think we really found a way to look at this freedom idea of what the organization is. Okay, I talked enough.
Yes,
Liza, your turn.
Sit.
Okay.
It's okay. For the next project is Alzheimer Nederland, or Alzheimer Netherlands. I'm not too sure if everybody knows what Alzheimer is, but I'll explain to you in a minute. This is the identity that was there before. And one thing that is very important in Studio Dumbar is our sketching process. The beginning part, the exploration, is really, really the most important. We spend most of our time actually sketching and sketching and sketching in order to find the end result. So the idea of sitting in a shower and coming up with an idea, that never happens to us. If that did happen to us, we'd probably have loads of showers in the studio, or in most design studios. Anyway, so this was the identity, and they really needed to upgrade or update, because they are in a very competitive world. Everybody's competing for money from all types of other foundations, such as cancer research or kidney research. Unfortunately, and something like this would not help them survive because the money is needed for more research. And Alzheimer actually is a deadly disease. It's estimated, at least in the Netherlands, that 1 in 7 people will suffer from some form of dementia. Because here, what you see, what happens with Alzheimer, your brain slowly sort of shrinks and you start losing, or you're losing your memory. And so it's very important we did something and do something immediately. So what I will show you next is the sketch process. So we don't necessarily start with, okay, make a logo. Just because somebody says make a logo, you don't have to start directly from that point. You can find the answer through many different expressions. So here we took pictures of families and we removed their faces because you start forgetting your family members. Or we started cutting from the pictures because your memory literally falls, like it slowly, completely disappears. We looked at distortion, again, because your brain is slowly distorting in a way, or your view on reality distorts. We played with the typography. We had some answers like this, but this was too aggressive. This is not the right tone. So these are things that we disregarded, or something like that. But this has, it's really, cold. It's not something that gives you any emotion. And then suddenly there were answers that were a lot heavier or darker. Again, this will never, if you see this in a doctor's office, you will never ever pick it up. Never. So it was really not the right way. Or something more abstract than some graphic design posters, and we're like, what are we doing? This is not for the right group. And with that, we, by sketching and sketching, we found this answer here that was the way to lead us to the result, which was this fading away. And actually, it was the most clear and direct way that we could communicate it. Instead of a lot of all this, it's just coming down to the most pure answer. And this became the identity for Alzheimer. And we use this on all communication. A very simple way, and through typography expressing what we wanted to say with photography. And then with very fluorescent colors, because these are colors that you remember. And then in combination with photography, and this is all their communication material. And we also came up with our communication methods, and this is a poster that says, I know that I don't know anymore. And that's a very difficult point in a patient's life, because that's a time where you know you have Alzheimer, and then there is a turn also in your life, and it's very hard for your family and for yourself. And now, for the last project, I have 7 minutes. Correct. The police, I would say, is a Dumbar classic. So, this is the police in the Netherlands. This is, it's cool, huh? This is from '94, so this is a relatively, so it's when it was first released, when, the Porsches looked like that. And, but just to tell you, like, how did this come about? Actually, the police in the Netherlands was they had 2 organizations. And as I understand, here in Italy, it's also similar that there's, I think, you also have 3, like, I was explained that. You even have people to collect the tax here, which is, I think, is crazy, but a good thing. Anyway, so this is the national police, and what you see there is a grenade, and the regional, and it's a book of law and a sword. And they decided to become one, which is actually not a bad idea. It's cost effective. And then there was a pitch in the Netherlands for this project. And what I show you now is what was actually presented at the pitch, so things that never went through. And you will probably agree why they never went through. So this was the first proposal. It is special, and I also think if you see the sketches, I think here, if you wear this, you probably will be killed in the seconds. It's like here, shoot me right here in the back of my thing. And then came the cars, also special. I think it's like a little bit like a tiger thing on the side.
Or a Wi-Fi single.
A Wi-Fi single, yeah, very ahead of its time. The second proposal, the second proposal I think is very Dutch, very friendly in a way, you know, like a nice policeman. But I think they meant it in a more aggressive way, like stop, we're gonna solve this problem, you know, like. And then the police car that actually, it doesn't look that great, but a lot of police cars do look like this in Europe, so. And this was the third proposal that got through. And here you see the Book of Law and the grenade. But in Holland, most of the people call this like it's the toast that's burning. Yeah, which I can understand that too. So this is the old uniforms that were proposed and the car. And thank God for taking ideas further, because this was the car proposal, which was very interesting. Well, maybe the best part was the gold caps in the front, which is a shame they didn't keep it, because that would be even more cooler. But that, I think, is such a graphic design idea, to put stripes also on the wheels. Because can you imagine these poor policemen? They're like in Law and Order, and suddenly they're like, it's not lined up. Yeah. What are we going to do? Anyway. So then there was the glow-in-the-dark version. But this, in the end, after development, this was the end result. And these are from the 90s. And of course, these are the more recent version. And I always say, for guys, if they go into a midlife crisis, join the police. You get to drive these cars. As you can see, that actually, it's not about the logo. It is about the striping itself. You recognize immediately that it's the police because it uses this, the stripes. And it's applied to every type of vehicle and transport. So even up to helicopters. But just to show you how much the Netherlands loves the police, or at least they've really got into copying the whole idea of looking like the police. I mean, which crazy person wants to look like the police? But in Netherlands, they've taken it one step further. So these are all the police rip-offs you have in the Netherlands. And there's a special department that, and also across the world, I think people like the idea, there's a special department that really goes after. So if you decide to look like the police tomorrow, you're going to be caught by the police in the Holland. So there you see all sorts of great and so horrible example. But you can also, you know, of course, have a tractor, because in case somebody steals all the, you know, the flowers and your police stationery, cakes, it's the police. Yeah.
They found out.
They found out. Shit. Boots, and of course, very, very important, the typical Dutch clogs. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.